Hello, everyone. I hope you're well and having a fantastic Tuesday. It's a little bit of a heat wave outside, so I hope you're enjoying it. My name is Prashani Dharmadasa. I'm the Market Development Manager for the UK and Ireland here at LinkedIn, and it's my pleasure to be your moderator today. Thank you so much for joining our webcast on Beating the UK Skills Gap. This is actually the final of a three-part web series that we have been running. So if you have actually missed our previous installments, we really took a deep dive into looking at how to attract and retain the best skills in the market. Our second part was very much around gaining competitive advantage through diversity and inclusion, where we had a really interesting discussion to really encourage businesses to take a broader view on diversity and inclusion when it comes to the skills agenda. And today we are going to be discussing how to attract the best skills in the market by creating a winning employer brand strategy. So the skills agenda in the UK is a business imperative, which is compounded by the macro trends like convergence, digitization, and the geopolitical landscape, as well as the uncertainty that comes with it. So what does this actually mean for businesses today? Well, it means that businesses need to apply a strategic approach to talent acquisition and retention of key skills. In a world of automation and noise, we really need to start to make things personal. And what I mean by that is to really capture the hearts and minds of your present as well as your future employees and really put employer branding at the heart of your talent acquisition strategy. So today I have the absolute pleasure of being joined by my colleague John McCall, who is the Talent Attraction Manager here at LinkedIn, and Caroline Andrews, who is the Vice President for HR for UK and Ireland at DHL Express, who will be sharing their thoughts on how to create a winning employer brand strategy. So you might want to stay tuned till the end. Well, before we actually dive straight into it, a few housekeeping items from me. At the bottom of your screen, you will see multiple application widgets, and all widgets are customizable and movable. So please feel free to move them around your desktop. So if you have any questions at all during the webcast, you can actually submit them through the Q&A button right at the bottom of your screen. And we will try and answer all of these questions, well, most of the questions, time permitting. But if we do run out of time, please rest assured that we will come back to you via email. An on-demand version of this webcast will be available approximately 24 hours after broadcast, and that can be accessed via your audience link, which you initially dialed in from. So let's jump straight into it. So it is my pleasure to hand the mic over to my colleague, John, who's going to be sharing his thoughts on employer brand strategy, as well as take you through a little bit of a journey on how we actually do employer branding here at LinkedIn as well. So over to you, John.
Prashani, good morning, and good morning indeed everybody dialing in and joining us this morning. I'm coming to you from Dublin, where thankfully we are finally getting our own little heat wave, but we're not really sure how long it'll last. But for now, we'll enjoy it. As Prashani was saying, I am the Talent Attraction Manager and Employer Brand Manager for LinkedIn in EMEA. And what I'm here to do today is to share a little bit of our experience about our journey over the past year in terms of talent attraction, share some of what we have found has worked for us, and to hopefully give you some really tangible tools to help take your talent attraction strategy wherever it is in its journey, whether you're at the start of it or whether you're fairly well into it, or whether you're a big company or a small company. Hopefully we'll be able to share some knowledge with you today. So I suppose maybe to start things off, one of the key things that we have found really through doing more so than research is that talent attraction journeys are not linear. It used to be a scenario that very clear inferences could be made between, campaigns and, candidates coming into process. But we see that there's a much bigger ecosystem at play here nowadays when we look at talent attraction. And what that has translated into is the fact that candidates will typically require between 8 and 10 touch points before they will commit to a process. So when we consider what those touch points are, we might also ask the question, well, why would we bother with any of this at all? What is the overall benefit to having a talent attraction strategy? And we will come to that in a moment. But when we also consider the overall number of touch points, we realize that there are many. And so a key imperative when we're starting this is to sort of have a baseline understanding that one size fits one. Many companies will have been quite established in their talent attraction strategy. Some will have better brand awareness in certain markets. Some will be brand new to other markets. Other companies have loads of money to throw at it, and other companies have very, very slim and slender budgets because they're trying to prove a concept. So what we have found certainly to be true of our experience is that while we can have an overarching talent attraction strategy, we really do need to be mindful that different brands will have different strengths and opportunities in different markets given their overall place in the market. I asked the question a few minutes ago about why would somebody bother with this at all, and in oftentimes the conversation around having a talent attraction strategy is very much couched in the yes, it's a lovely nice to have, and it's not top of the list in terms of our overall recruitment strategy for a company. However, what we found at LinkedIn was tracking our data over the year. We put a concerted effort into our talent attraction strategy, and we spotted a 66% lift year on year in the volume of direct applicants coming into our business. So that's a very, very considerable shift, which we would link very certainly to the really increased use of our TA Media products on our platform. But many of you will be familiar with the fact that we're not always looking for more applicants, we're looking for better applicants. And that has also translated into a stronger percentage of hires coming from these direct applicants. So in terms of the why, there is a proper business imperative behind it, and it's backed up by data. I mentioned a few minutes ago about the overall talent attraction ecosystem, and I suppose it's worth considering what that actually looks like. We know that based on our research that candidates will take between 6 and 8 touch points before they will commit to entering an interview process and to actually, arranging that discovery call with the recruiter. But, one of those touch points can be word of mouth. For example, different people will have conversations outside of our control. There are only certain elements of the ecosystem that are within our control. So it's worth knowing that these conversations that go on by word of mouth will impact the talent attraction strategy. Also, when you look at our interview process, candidates, when they are interacting with recruiters or recruitment coordinators or sourcing partners, they will also have a very, very clear understanding of what a company is like as an employer of choice, and that will be getting heavily influenced by that process. Looking at research as well, there are lots of ratings websites, Glassdoor being one of the more popular ones of them, where candidates regularly go and try and research the people who they might be working with and research the companies who they might be working with. So it's important to understand that. We also look at reputation, a company's wider reputation, where they stand on corporate social responsibility issues. What are they known for as a company? That will really directly impact it too. But the one that I would like to spend a little bit of time chatting with you today about is around the area of online engagement. And that is an area that we have seen really, really tangible benefits for our hiring strategy. And, hopefully we'll be able to share some of those best practices with you. One of the questions that has consistently cropped up when we start chatting with our recruiting partners, and indeed when our conversation about getting moving on our strategy started about a year ago, is that, we really want to get going on something, but we're not really certain where to start. And I think that is true of very established companies and smaller companies who are starting their journey. And one of the key suggestions that we can make is, spend some time to understand what your employer brand stands for. And how you might do that is really just to ask your team. There are a couple of key questions that need to be asked before you can build the foundation of where to take your talent attraction strategy. First out, what do you stand for as a company? What is your reputation? What would your employees say about you when you're not in the room? This will help to form the foundation and the basis for your employer brand moving forward. And at LinkedIn, it truly helped us understand what the link is between our corporate brand and back to our employer brand. It's important to understand that your employer brand cannot exist in a vacuum, and that it is inextricably linked to your corporate brand. And so, in essence, one will piggyback off the other. This also will help form part of some of that ecosystem we spoke about earlier on. So key to ensuring that candidate experience is a positive one is making sure that there's a level of consistency and familiarity across all of those touch points. So We spoke about developing brand pillars and what our brand stands for, and to walk you through the example of what we did at LinkedIn, to help us understand our talent attraction strategy, we did a bit of soul searching ourselves and decided to ask a lot of people internally, and some of our leaders and some of our employees, what they believed that we stood for. And the first one that came about was our mission and vision. So LinkedIn's mission is to connect every member of the global workforce with economic opportunity. And so what that translated to in terms of an employee value proposition was that, how can someone's career develop here at LinkedIn? What personal and professional transformations could they expect to achieve during their time here, the impact that they could have as part of our mission to help every member of the global workforce reach economic opportunity. The second pillar that we found out about was about warmth and humanity. So LinkedIn's culture is something that we firmly hang our hat on. And we really believe that it is probably our unique selling point and what sets us apart from other companies. We try to make a very welcoming place where people are encouraged and empowered to do the best work of their lives. And that's something that has resonated both with people who are still at LinkedIn and people who have moved on to played their next role elsewhere. And then thirdly, DIBS. So DIBS stands for Diversity, Inclusion and Belonging. It's an acronym that has many different permutations in different areas. But it's how do we as a company generate a sense of belonging where people can be themselves. So what we have here are three core messages that we were able to understand to be absolutely intrinsic to our brand. And so that whenever we were developing content for going out on our platform, and content could be videos, it could be blogs, it could be static images that we put a paid campaign behind, provided we are pulling on the thread linked to one of those three, then we know we were always going in the right direction. A couple of real benefits that can arise out of you doing this with your firm, if this is something that is still to be achieved, is that firstly it helps you understand, or it helps us understand, that there is no fourth pillar. So it prevents any mishaps in terms of people going off message and starting to stray into an area that would be traditionally the remit of comms. So that's quite an important nuance, because when we are trying to empower our teams to go out to market with our message, we want to make sure that they have a set of signposts. And the word signpost is really quite important, because what we're not trying to do is create a set of rules. It's a set of signposts that help guide people when they are creating content. Once we move on then and we understand that we know essentially the core messages that we want to incorporate into any of our campaigns, we set about busting a couple of myths. And the first one that came to mind was that I need a fancy creative agency and a big budget to make a talent attraction video. I think if we were looking at talent attraction or employer marketing, as it might have been known maybe 6-7 years ago, the propensity was that it all had to be done by an agency, and it had to have fly-through shots of the building, and every video had to feature a foosball table or you just weren't at the races. And so what that started to look like was just a little bit of, a fancy Hollywood production that was a little bit inauthentic and didn't really give the opportunity for the people who are in these roles in the companies to have their say and to have their ability to have their voice heard. What we ended up doing was we decided the best scenario and the best route for us is to make sure that we do it all in a scalable format in-house. And the reality is that in many instances, and this is true of our experience, is that your talent brand is already in your pocket. Most people nowadays have a smartphone. So in terms of tech and skill set, you're most of the way there in terms of being able to bring your message out. The overall investment that we started out with very early on was people's smartphones, a small little microphone and a small tripod. So conceivably less than £100 if we were buying them in the local tech store. And along with that, really what was required and is required is a growth mindset and a willingness to try things. And not everything will land first time, and indeed it didn't land first time for us, and we started making tweaks and adjustments and measuring and iterating about how we would go forward. And so that is a key takeaway for us, that we would empower our teams to use what's already available to them, rather than having to get worried about briefing agencies and working out in skill sets that may not have been very natural or at first hand to them. So a couple of the key takeaways that we can sum up really in broad terms for how we have recommended and how we have seen our talent attraction strategy come together is, first out, understand what your brand stands for. Try and distill it down into 3 key messages and socialize those messages within your firm and within everybody within TA, and help them feel empowered to tell that story as well. And similarly, we did that with our teams in LinkedIn, and we have seen huge benefits from it. The second one is keep it authentic. To the point earlier on about it not looking like a Hollywood production, really what we're trying to do is make sure that the people being featured are the people who are actually doing the roles themselves, and that they get the opportunity to speak on behalf of their own experience rather than have something hugely scripted for them. For any companies and for any people operating in international environments, one thing that we have seen is that content developed in native language will receive on average 2.5x the level of engagement that would be expected if the content were in English. We have certainly seen this in the DACH region, so Germany, Austria and Switzerland, and then indeed in other legislation, in other areas. Say, for example, in France, there is legislation that you must be advertising in French, but we have seen that that is a hugely beneficial way. And the final 3 points is about helping you build the ecosystem. And it's back to the point earlier on that one size will fit one and there is no silver bullet. But the more that you can develop small pieces of content that again link back to your core messages each and every time, then the more you know that you're building the overall sense of pattern and the consistent levels of engagement that your candidates will start to meet as they go along, and to build those 6 to 8 touch points that will ultimately help them move into an overall TA process. Again, the point about it not being overproduced is helpful because it means that it can be scalable, and you also don't need to be Martin Scorsese to turn this around yourself in-house. And that was a big learning for us, that we had to make a call on that. And a very important part about this is measuring, tweaking, iterating, and making sure that you go again. And this is true of us. And a colleague of mine once said to me, if you release something on a given day and you're very happy with it, that's a phenomenal result. But if you look back on it in 6 months' time and you're still very happy with it and you still wouldn't change a thing, there's a chance that you might have missed something. So there are always ways to improve and tweaks and small adjustments that can be made, but your data will really help you understand that. And so that brings me roughly to the conclusion of my presentation here to you now this morning. And with that, I would like to pass the microphone over to my colleague, Caroline.
Oh, thank you, John. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning. I would like to share with you our experience as a company in creating a winning employer brand as part of our strategy to beat the challenges of the UK skills gap. As mentioned, I'm Caroline Andrews and I'm the VP of HR for UK and Ireland for DHL Express, and we provide international courier services, picking up and delivering shipments as fast as possible around the world via a scheduled express network. We operate in more than 220 countries and territories and help facilitate world trade by enabling our customers to expand their business to and from any country. We work with a broad range of customers, both B2B and B2C, from traditional manufacturing businesses, professional services, through to e-commerce retailers. I'm particularly passionate about this topic, as addressing the skills gap of today and in the future effectively determines our ability to compete as an employer and to be an employer of choice and as a business in the market. Over the next 15 minutes or so, I will cover 4 key areas: our employer brand and our employee value proposition, otherwise known as EVP, our attributes and how they link to the EVP, people as brand ambassadors, and creating a winning employer brand that attracts the right people. Our employer brand and its attractiveness is really about our reputation in terms of what it's like to work for us as a company and what makes us unique and different from other companies. Externally, it communicates our culture, and often we're competing for the same talent as other companies, and we rely on our employer brand to attract the right people to DHL. The stronger the persona of our employer brand, the more people should be able to self-select or deselect whether we're an organisation they'd like to work for. Much of our internal EVP, i.e. the employee experience and the reality of working for us, influences both our external employer brand and the loyalty of our existing people. Social media, as we all know, and people's networks play a significant role in this, and I will talk a little bit more about this later. At DHL, our ability to compete in terms of attracting and retaining great people is key to our business strategy, and it's the same as our people strategy. It all starts with motivated people. We're a service business with replicable assets, and hence it's our people that differentiate us and give us our competitive edge in the marketplace. It's our motivated people that provide great service quality to our customers that encourages them to be loyal. And it enables us to be a profitable network, and it's people who are at the heart of our business. At DHL, from an EVP perspective, I would call out 3 key areas that make us a special place to work. The first being as one, the creation of DHL memories. When celebrating our superstars for their contribution and commitment in a spirit that truly is as one. These DHL unique experiences shown on the screen include Kingdom Cup, which is our football tournament on a national scale, Ambassadors of the Road, which celebrates the skills of our drivers, and Appreciation Week, whereby we celebrate all our employees for their contribution in various ways, such as getting together for a team lunch or an evening out. Also, you'll see pictures of our Trailblazer netball event, which launched this year. They all encourage an emotional connection with the brand and loyalty from our people. The other one that I would call out is development opportunities. Our Certified International Specialist and Certified Supervisory, Manager and Leadership programs equip people with both industry knowledge and personal development. We also operate accelerated learning programs that have supported the readiness of a talent pipeline, especially at middle manager level, offering rapid advancement, which we know is particularly important to Gen Y. This has given us the ability to mobilise people between functions and geographies to meet the needs of our business. For example, our Sales Need You campaign was personally designed to attract people from outside the sales function and has supported the top line growth of our business. To retain great people, development is a key aspect of an EVP. We have found people who develop their careers with us have on average more than double the length of service at 19 years, which we're particularly proud of. The last one that I would call out would be international experience. Due to our global footprint, being part of a network that operates in more than 220 countries and territories offers a unique international employee experience that most other companies can't rival. Our people gain valuable experiences and knowledge of cultural sensitivities that come with being part of a truly global workforce. For example, our graduates, as part of their placement, will have opportunities and the option to do an international assignment. We also very much consider ourselves as an incredible network of people across our business, a real global family. Essentially, you're never alone in the world when you work for DHL. And it's not uncommon to be speaking to colleagues from across the world, and I think this is one of our great strengths. In terms of what unifies people with our business culture, it's very simple. It's our attributes of speed, passion, can-do, and right first time. Much of our EVP relates to these, especially in terms of how we recognise our Certified International Specialists that go the extra mile. Whether that be local recognition by a line manager or one of our more formalised recognition schemes, such as Extra Mile, Employer of the Quarter, or Employee of the Year, all of which are based on the DHL attributes and peer-to-peer recognition. We have a long-serving community in our business, and when we talk about talent, we're talking about all the touch points across the employee life cycle. One thing we're increasingly conscious of is we have to cater for different groups of employees. The evolution of employee behaviours, for example, amongst the millennials, and let's not forget the alphas, who will be joining us in the workplace in several years, and that time will no doubt fly by, through to those working beyond traditional retirement age, means that when it comes to topics such as recognition, we have to take a holistic approach, from instant recognition through to loyalty service awards, to essentially be able to cater for the 1 Marshmallow Kid and the 2 Marshmallow Kid, and everything in between. If you've not heard about the Marshmallow Kid, I would really encourage you to Google it, because it's absolutely fascinating. Likewise, how do we beat the developing landscape of the skills gap, whereby future generations of leaders are likely to have better interpersonal skills via a device than face-to-face, thanks to the monumental growth and usage of social media, and for the generations coming through, probably gaining. I believe this poses a real quandary for businesses that differentiate on the basis of people, and there is a need to fully get to grips with the concept of e-leadership. The world whereby we see our leaders of today and tomorrow, video streaming into blogs, etc., and have the ability and capability to trigger a positive viral response digitally from employees. As mentioned previously, when attracting people to our business, we find our employer brand really helps them to understand what it means to be an employee. Likewise, employee content is key. We find that our employees generate the best content on telling the reality of the employee experience through them sharing their own personal stories of their DHL journey on social media. This itself promotes authenticity of the brand and consequently echoes the care we have for our people. Candidates often relate to these outcomes from the UVP and translate them in relation to our employer brand when talking about why DHL. Upon joining, such stories are shared via our comms channels as part of reinforcing our EVP to our people internally. In essence, a great people experience based on the right EVP for your organisation will likely result in authentic personal storytelling and emotional engagement with the business. This, in the connected world, very much influences your employer brand externally and the perception of why join or stay a company like DHL. Hence, it's important to work out the unique stuff that you want to be talked about both internally and externally, and look for ways to encourage this to happen. To meet current and future talent needs, when it comes to inclusion, it's very much about being a brand that advocates and role models being an employer for all, subject to the values of the individuals being aligned. In logistics, we find we're not only battling the skills gap in the UK, but also industry stereotypes. Typically, these include perceptions of an ageing male operations workforce. This compounds the skills gap. We have highly successful women and men in our business, and we're more than an operation. Our business, like any other, has all functions, and this is something we have intentionally looked to communicate through our employer brand. As part of addressing the UK skills gap, we partner with brands that complement our own. This has assisted us in connecting with different talent pools and employee segments, alongside promoting industry appeal. Some examples of this working well for DHL include one of our sponsorships, Leicester City Football Club, which has enabled DHL to give unique play-on-pitch experiences for people we have supported through Street League, a sports charity which aims to overcome social barriers and help young people into employment. In addition, these young people have gained DHL work experience and access to job opportunities within our network. Another one that I would mention is Harlequins Rugby Club, another sponsorship of ours, who we collaborated with on our graduate scheme. The ladies' Harlequins rugby team supported our in-house assessment centres, acting as role models in terms of women at the top of their game and delivering thought leadership sessions to give candidates a unique experience and differentiating us from other assessment centres. This also benefited the Harlequin Sports Club employees through exposure and experience in the DHL environment. I think collaborating with other organisations for the purpose of talent exchanges and enabling exposure and experiences will become commonplace in the future as part of our retention efforts. Likewise, talent with digital skills we might see stereotypically choose tech and creative businesses. And in the future, other businesses may need to collaborate with these organisations to gain access to such talent and skills. The importance of diversity and inclusion at DHL is communicated via our employer brand as a result of our diverse employee population sharing stories about their DHL experience as part of the logistics industry. Diversity and inclusion is embraced and celebrated within DHL. Our International Women's Day campaign really brought this to life. Also, it's not just about gender for us. We focus on all areas, including learning differences. And to embrace and support this particular aspect of diversity, our learning specialists have expertise to help identify and support people who may present in the workplace as needing some extra support. Naturally, there is a plethora of metrics that can be used to assess the effectiveness of your employer brand and your EVP. This aside, I would advocate, as part of the strategy to beat the UK skills gap, an employer brand should be based on an authentic EVP. And DHL's is based on being as one, opportunities for development, and experience of working for an international company. I would encourage people on today's call to consider what your EVP is based on and how you communicate this via your brand. The key takeaways from me today are a winning employer brand will attract the right people whose values align well with those of your company, and an authentic EVP will help you retain the right people. And you may actually retain them for longer if it features people development as part of the offering. A differentiated employee experience will create special memories. That will inspire people to act as advocates of your employer brand by sharing their stories and self-created content both inside and outside of work. The right experience will support engagement and make your employer brand stand out. Lastly, I suggest for your EVP and brand to stand out, you should include the things that differentiate your company from others. So thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the presentation and that this helps you beat the UK skills gap. I will now hand back to Prashani for the Q&A session.
Thank you so much, Caroline, and thank you as well, John. What a fascinating discussion. I think, you know, the highlights that actually came through were essentially truth, relevance, participation, drives conversion, and that's actually really key when you look at how you attract and engage as well as retain the skills and the talent for your organization. The other three things that really jumped at me was really kind of understanding your audience and creating an employer brand strategy that is relevant and that speaks to the audience segment that you want to actually reach out to. And finally, it's the personalization of that experience. So thank you once again to our presenters for that fantastic content. We do have a few questions that have cropped up. So, I mean, really interesting, I would say both tactical as well as strategic. But if I can actually jump to the first one, and I'm going to leave this open for both Caroline and John to jump in on. If a company has never implemented an employer brand strategy before, what would you say would be the top 3 practical things needed to get started? So, John, if I can get you to jump in on that first, please.
Sure. I think, I suppose the 3 practical things that can be done, I touched a little bit on it in my presentation, is first and foremost, you need to understand the basis or the foundation that your brand is built on. And that can and should be able to be distilled down into a one-pager. So ask your teams, actively find out, have conversations, have focus groups with the people who work in various different areas of the business. Things that, like, you know, well, what is it that keeps you here? What do you do as part of your day job that wasn't part of your job spec and you love? And to understand all of those nuances as to why somebody wants to be part of your company. And that will really help understand the basis of what your core messages should be. A second thing would be to make it somebody's job, because until talent attraction strategy is somebody's job, it's really nobody's job. And if you're in a situation where you're trying to seed an overall and develop an appetite to push this along, have somebody as part of your talent acquisition team work on this for a quarter or maybe for 6 months and have it part of their deliverables. It's not that the deliverable will be this beautifully fleshed out brand by the end of it, but it will start the overall conversation, and it will also empower that person to really dig in and keep going with it. And the third thing would be to have an understanding that not everybody is going to get on board with it straight away. That's true of companies and small companies. And if we look at marketing theory, we know there are always those kind of early adopters, and then we have that significant majority that will come later. So use that idea of having a couple of champions at the start and brand ambassadors to help prove your concept. So first thing out, understand what your brand stands for. Second thing out is to make sure that it's somebody's job to really start digging into this. And the third thing is to engage a couple of ambassadors. You won't get everybody first time out with this.
Wonderful. Thank you, John. Caroline, can I get your take on it?
Sure. I think I'd more build on what John said, and I think the other thing I'd encourage people to do is to get an understanding of where you're starting from. So what is the perception externally about you as an employer? Again, by talking to people, it could be people that for some reason applied with your company but decided then not to join. It could be looking at the social media presence and what's being said about you and reflected about your company as an employer. And also to look at insights internally around data and metrics, and what is that suggesting as well about either your EVP and your brand. So I'd also encourage people to think about that. And also empowering people. So once you're clear about what you'd like people to associate your brand with internally and to reflect externally, to really, I suppose, empower people to act and make that happen.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We've also got another question, and I think, John, you might have alluded to this just a second ago, but where in the business do you feel employer brand should sit and why? So, Caroline, perhaps if you wanted to jump in on that firstly.
Well, I'm a big believer that your employer brand should always be aligned with your commercial brand, and so I think it should be owned at the board level in the boardroom. Essentially, you know, it's important to utilise all the relevant expertise from around the table to ensure your employer brand is as strong or equal to your commercial brand. And if the company is on a bit of a journey with this, it may naturally fall more towards the people function to champion it. That would be my view.
And John?
Yeah, I think that's something that's quite true of our experience as well. I mean, so for how LinkedIn has this structured is that we have this as part of our global talent organization. So yes, it's firmly part of the people function setup, and it is indeed championed at board level and fundamentally part of everything that we do. And I think what's an interesting one to help that conversation move forward is that in some instances, because employer branding in some firms will be new and so in other firms it'll be quite established, is to help understand, I suppose, a little bit of what it is. And I think the analogy I used once is that it's effectively, you know, in some ways the marketing department for recruitment. And so that understanding it at that point helps also have those conversations with people in comms and marketing and wider areas of the business, that this isn't about delivering, you know, a corporate message or standing on the toes of somebody who works in the comms function or trying to take over brand identity from somebody who is aligned to the advertising or marketing function. And so I think a hugely important piece there is when somebody within a firm is keen to start moving on this, to help their colleagues and their wider business stakeholders understand what it's not trying to do in as much as what it is trying to do. And it's not about trying to step on other people's toes. So it in my opinion, it should sit within TA, but work very closely with the likes of marketing and comms, but again, not try to take over from them in areas.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you so much. The other question we have is really around the measures of success. How would you measure the impact of your employer brand, and what would you say would be the key measures of success?
I can jump in there. I suppose I can share how we measured. We have a couple of ways, I suppose, at a wider, I suppose, top of funnel, or rather bottom of funnel, sort of that very specific end of things, that we track the volume of direct applicants that will be coming in. We track the number of hires that will be coming in as a result of our go-to-market strategy. And then within that, we can measure the overall you know, the impact of specific campaigns through attribution on our analytics side of things. The overall measurement of success of talent brand continues to be a little bit more of a nebulous one, because it's about a feeling, it's about a perception, it's about how candidates and indeed existing employees regard you as an employer of choice. And that's something that is much more difficult to measure and give a direct, I suppose, a percentage or a percentage lift. But I suppose business updates and business reviews being the way they are, ultimately everybody likes to see a graph going up and to the right. So what we tend to do is give a wider picture about the ecosystem that we're building, and then give an output in terms of the impact that we have attributed to the ultimate hiring that has come out of those campaigns and those strategic initiatives.
Wonderful. And if I can bring you in as well, Caroline.
Sure, and I would echo what John said, and I suppose the ones I would call out traditionally that we would look at are things like cost per hire, time to fill, time to productivity is obviously a really key and important one. Looking at employee engagement rates, and if we talk about the candidates, we do NPAs, so looking at their satisfaction rates. Analysis on top talent, why do they choose to either leave or stay? So there's a whole plethora, but it is important to look at that bigger picture, and it's more about how easy do we find it to attract and retain good people.
Wonderful. And I think, we have got one last question, but it's actually quite a big question. So just in the interest of time, we have actually only got 5 minutes left. So perhaps if you both wanted to take a quick stab at this, how would you align your employer brand with the overall business strategy? And that's a pretty big question, isn't it? So
sure
Caroline, if you can go first.
No, go ahead. I think for me, it would be about being really clear long term about what is your business looking to achieve. And then once you've got a good understanding of that, to be clear on the skills that are needed for the future to be able to deliver upon that. And then to really then understand the gap. And then it goes back to a lot of what we talked about today in the presentation in terms of how do we create that through the unique experiences, the authentic brand, to attract the right talent and skills into the business, whether it's through collaborating with other organisations, etc. So that way the overall business strategy can be delivered on the back of the employer brand.
Perfect. Thank you, Caroline. And John, you wanted to share some thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree again with Caroline's point, and it comes back to the point that we made earlier on about that the success of talent attraction and employer branding is largely derived out of how important is it at boardroom level, and so we're looking to have that conversation very much part of the agenda at every meeting. So on a quarterly basis, we would meet with our business leaders and regional sales leaders to understand where they see the growth happening over the long term, what kind of strategic imperatives they're trying to bed into their overall organisation, and then we work with them to understand how we can implement them and incorporate those messages into our employer brand strategy. So it means that ultimately all of our campaigns are driving towards achieving their results as well.
Absolutely. I think that's a really important question and a really important lens to look at employer branding strategies. So, what seemingly might seem as something that is quite intangible, employer brand is absolutely something that really needs to sit at the heart of any talent acquisition strategy or people strategy. And it also needs to align very closely with your employee value proposition, as Caroline mentioned earlier. So with that in mind, and I'm just looking at time as well, it kind of, the session now comes to a close. And I just wanted to say a huge thank you to John, Caroline, and I also have to mention our friends at the British Chambers of Commerce as well, who have been supporting us with the previous 2 webcasts as well around the whole skills agenda. We are planning to do more of these webcasts, personally, because I think that these are very interesting conversations and they're very fun. They're a lot of fun to do. So, I'm hoping to actually have a number of these webcasts actually taking place over the coming months. But finally, I just wanted to say to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in and for your participation and your engagement. If you wanted to know more about LinkedIn or DHL, please do, drop us a line. Don't hesitate to reach out to myself or John. More than happy to answer any questions. And with that in mind, I wanted to say thank you very much and have a great Tuesday and a week ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.